con traducción simultánea en español y con la participación de José María Palencia, consejero delegado de World Duty Free Group; Miguel Fluchá, presidente del Grupo Iberostar; Antonio Vázquez, presidente de IAG; Peter Long, Chief Executive Group Management Board of TUI Travel plc; Gerald Lawless, President and Group Chief Executive Officer of Jumeirah Group; y Luis Maroto, Chief Executive Officer of Amadeus IT Group. Modera Taleb Rifai, secretario general de la Organización Mundial del Turismo.
Ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, we're about to start a very exciting and interesting panel with wonderful people here on the stage. I don't think I'm going to reintroduce them. I think you will get to know them in the course of the discussion. They were just introduced when they came up on stage. We are going to be discussing three main issues around here, and then, if time allows, we will engage in as much as possible a frank, honest, open, informal discussion. First of all, yesterday, I was privileged to announce the results of 2013 on the international level. In a press conference, UNWTO announced that there was a 5% growth increase in 2013 over 2012 in international tourism arrivals. We have not closed our figures on the international tourism receipts, but they will follow that trend. We have now about 1,087,000,000 international travelers crossing borders each year. That happened against the background of rather complicated and difficult economic landscape, also against the background of major crises, man-made some, natural others, and a very complicated political landscape as well. We would want to hear from you, how do you explain that? 5% growth on the international level, particularly in Europe, where many people were not so optimistic about economic prospects, yet Europe even grew at a 5% average, and that is remarkable. Two, I'd like to hear from you as a representative of very prominent private sector enterprises. What policies, if you were to choose one or two contributions, policies, achievements that you would like governments to do, the public sector to do, what would that be? Thirdly, I'd like to hear from you what you would want to do, what you think the private sector should do in that regard. So along those three lines, I'm going to pose now three questions that are formulated along that, and then we will simply try to react to that. And I would like, as much as possible, to have you respond quickly so that we could go back and forth and not make them long presentations in as much as possible. So my first question, And I'm already alarming Antonio and Gerald. You're going to be the first to answer this one. In 2013, international tourism registered an increase of 5%. The number of tourists traveling the world, this growth was particularly positive in Europe in spite of lingering economic conditions. The question is, how do you explain such growth in view of the existing global economic constraints and all other said? How do you explain it to others? Why tourism? And what is your understanding, your analysis to the situation? Antonio.
Well, thank you. I'll be the first. And what I believe is when we talk about the crisis environment, I think we're being too generic. As a matter of fact, there have been crises in a part of the world, but there is no crisis at all, or there has been a much benign environment in another part of the world. And so I think it's the increase is basically due to the fact that is increasing the number of people within the middle class in a lot of emerging countries, and there is something that we are feeling all over the world. And I think it's going to continue, certainly. And from our perspective, it's in the coming 10 years, it's going to be continue increasing. And from the qualitative point of view, more likely it's going to increase much more in big cities than in the traditional way of tourists that we have been experiencing up to now. So I think it's quite a positive news.
So you're attributing this to the changing global landscape and the new entries to the market and the new source market that are coming to the scene? Am I understand you right?
Well, I think the answer should be much deeper, but it doesn't comply with the 2 minutes answer, you know. What I think it's the big revolution in the last era has been that the binomium between the demography and talent is absolutely changed in such a way that talent and demography right now sometimes are in the same place, and they're generating a big number, a middle class which is increasing and is looking for being traveling around the world.
Very good. Gerald, you adhere to that?
Well, I would, of course, but I would also be interested to know where did the 5% extra tourists and visitors come from, which is, again, going to Antonio's point, because we really need to know, is it because Europeans aren't travelling as far and they're travelling more within Europe, therefore increasing the amount of business within Europe itself? Or is the 5% all external European coming into Europe? Is it? The 5% increase of tourism, has that come from within the European Union or has it come from outside the European Union?
Well, Europe until now is constituting more than 50% of international travelers. But if you move from France to Germany, that's one count. So
yes.
It's inter-European plus the others.
So it does count?
Yes.
So I'm sure part of it is contributed by more people travelling
into Europe,
shorter distances, thereby staying in Europe. Plus the fact that, of course, the emerging world is really coming. I mean, we see it in Dubai, for example, the amount of business that we're getting from places like China, from Russia as well, which is a huge contributor particularly, and it'll be interesting to see your figures when they come out in terms of value and the spend per head that's coming through. So I think that is one of the main contributors. And then the ongoing development of budget airlines and the competition within the airline industry, which Antonio would be much more aware of than I would, from the point of view of the price pressure, but the encouragement of people to travel. And I think people have got used to the situation as well, and that the recession has bottomed out. It might be still very tough for the people, obviously, who are not employed, but the people in employment are perhaps not as concerned that they will lose their jobs as they would have been about 3 or 4 years ago, and therefore are much more inclined to travel because, let's face it, we know in our industry everybody loves to travel, and they will continue to do so.
And it's becoming a culturally ingrained activity, more or less.
It is. It's becoming a human right.
That's correct. That's correct. Thank you so much. You will forgive me if I address you by your first name. I hope that's okay with you. I would like to enforce the informality here. So I would like to hear also from Jose Luis, please.
Jose Luis?
I'm sorry, Jose Maria. Jose Maria, I'm sorry.
I absolutely agree with Antonio in terms of the economical revolution in the last years and in the years to come. No? So I think mainly for Eastern passengers, and there is a very, very clear economic reason, increasing of the middle class. I think in the next 20 years, in relative terms, the global size of the middle class will double in relative size. I think there are two other main reasons that put Europe very much also in the center of the game. One is a technological reason. Aircrafts are bigger, are cheaper. I was reading, giving you my heart, but I was reading some statistics. I think in the last 20 years, the average size of an aircraft has increased by 25%. And in real US dollars, also in the last 20 years, a typical domestic round trip has become something like 50% cheaper. And this is really a technological revolution. If you add to that technological revolution the fact that the airport infrastructure is well consolidated in Europe, we have supply, we have a relative capacity of supply in terms of slots. You can find also that Europe is in the best place. There is also a cultural thing. There is no other place in the world probably in which in 3 hours time of flight you can find the diversity. You can find going from Finland to southern Spain. This is 3 hours flight. If you add to that the cultural heritage, 90% of the cultural wonders in the world, you would find Europe very well placed to be in the center of the game of tourism in the next years.
And you're expecting that Europe will maintain this edge for quite a while?
Yes. In fact, in terms of value, if you reckon that the fleets in the Western countries are growing something like 4.5% a year, and that will happen for the next 20 years, these travelers will have to fly to some place. And in that sense, I reckon that Europe will be still one of the first choices due to that diversity and due to the fact that the place to know in terms or to discover for first time in terms of proximity and in terms of efficiency are mainly located in Europe.
Thank you so much. Since Jose Maria mentioned the issue of technology, maybe Luis, as president of Amadeus, you could dwell a little bit on that. Do you think it's a factor in making people travel more and played a big factor in the growth that we have seen?
Buenas tardes. Thanks for the invitation. The answer completely is yes. I mean, travel is complex. There are many factors involved when you travel. We have heard before the panel that we were talking about mobility and search, and then you need to go into the plane and book. And what the traveler is looking for is really the simplification of everything that he's doing at the end and the integration of all the elements that constitute the travel. Travel will continue increasing. There are more ways to travel in the world, more ways to really find your alternatives, more information available. The amount of data and options that a traveler has today has increased a lot. It's exponential with the capability of the individual traveler to look for alternatives. And therefore, the technology needs to integrate all these options, provide less information. I believe that the traveler or the tourist is having too much choice today. And the role of the technology will be, in my view, in the future to personalize and to find the relevant content, not the amount of content that today is available for each one. So by all means, the technology needs to provide business intelligence tools, need to provide the integration of these offers between the different providers to avoid that this amount and this dispersion of offer will impact the way people travel, because at the end, travel is inherent to all of us and will continue growing in the coming years. So technology needs to play a key role in providing that.
And it is already. it is already contributing to this growth.
I mean, in technology goes extremely fast. I mean, we know the changes that are happening all the time, but the technology is just reflecting the evolution of the industry and the evolution of the people moving. So it's an enable that should facilitate life and not the contrary. So of course the technology has been allowing part of this growth that we are talking about.
Thank you so much. Peter, I'm leaving you to the end. But I'd like to ask Miguel, please. Miguel, and I know how to pronounce your last name very good now, Fluxa. Miguel, from a hospitality perspective, can you see any different explanation from what was presented from the good panelists now as to this trend of continuing to grow strongly against very many odds?
Well, from the resort destinations, that is where we are strong as a hotel company, what we have seen is different facts that they have helped to increase the traffic to our destinations. The technology has increased tremendously. During years, internet was not producing passengers. We had in our hotel maybe 1%, 2%. Since the people, they realized that they could make a booking giving the credit card without a risk, the amount of bookings they have increased tremendously. At the same time, the systems that we had before, they were obsolete, they were not updated. Today, you can make a booking to any hotel, even an individual hotel, and you have a web where you have an answer to your questions. And this has made it more easy, the booking for the clients, either direct or through the tour operators, because the way to work with the tour operator is changing. Now we are connected by internet. We have different approach to the problem. At the same time, the low-cost airlines has helped very much in increasing the trend to different countries. For example, in Morocco, in our hotels, we have 30% online business. 30% in Morocco. This means that you have EasyJet, you have Ryanair, you have Air Berlin who is flying there. So they have produced seats at a low price with new planes, with comfortable planes, and this has been a new player in the whole tourist business, which has made a big effect, especially in our destinations. At the same time, we are seeing that the domestic tourist is increasing. In countries like Morocco, just to repeat another, we have Moroccan people who came to our hotels during the summer. In Spain, we have got during many years a tremendous amount of clients to our hotel during these last years, because the economy has suffered all the big mistakes we did before. The amount of traffic from Spain went down. However, now that the macroeconomy is giving some lights, we can see that this winter in the snow resorts, it has been an increase and a big demand from the Spanish customers. So we believe for next summer, the Spanish customers will come back, maybe not in the proportion that we had before, but in Spain there is a middle class who had money in the banks, but they were frightened to spend them during all this turmoil that nobody knew where we were going. So we have an expectation that Spain will wake up and we will have a lot of clients next summer.
Thank you so much. Yes, Gerald, I just want to include Peter, if you don't mind, and then I'll come back to you on this. Because, Peter, we should, to complete the picture from the trade perspective, it's very important to hear what you have to say. We have heard now arguments in favor of the economic developments in the global landscape, the rise of the middle class, technology, airlines, connectivity. Do you see those as the main factors, or would you add any other factor to this strong performance of the travel and tourism industry against a very uncertain and fluid economic situation?
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure to be here, and it's a pleasure to be invited to be on the stage today. I guess the perspective that I would introduce is customer psyche and what customers want. And when I look at our business, which is primarily Europe, where we have a leadership position, and I look at the big markets of the UK and Germany, what we see there is our customers saying, I will forego other expenditures to ensure that I can have my holiday. And the environment may be tough, and it has been, certainly in the UK over the last 3 years, but it has not stopped that fundamental desire to go on the overseas holiday. And I think that's why we are not directly, our industry, an indicator of overall consumer confidence. Because even in tough and difficult times, we've seen very resilient demand, as your figures show. I think the other point that the gentlemen have already raised is the BRIC economies, where there are 3 billion people, roughly, and there's this huge emerging middle class who are now deciding, well, once I've got income and disposable income, I want to spend like in the West, and I want to expend it on experiences. And the dynamics are huge, what's going on at the moment. For instance, I was in the Maldives last week, and 5 years ago, 5% of the customers going to the Maldives were Chinese. Today it's 25%. Thailand, the number one destination, source market for Thailand is Russia. So you've got that dynamic going on, and this is only going to get bigger because this middle-class emergence and growth is absolutely huge. So I think that there are two aspects, but fundamentally it is customers saying leisure travel is very important and we want to enjoy it, and that's why I think we will see very resilient figures as we go forward.
Thank you so much, Peter. I think it's a very important point. It's the cultural transformation now. As Gerald just said before, travel has become not just a human need, but a human right, more or less. Gerald, you wanted to add something to that?
I was just saying as well, maybe we should give some credit also to the tourism boards of the European countries. I know in Ireland they introduced this initiative called The Gathering for 2013, where they encouraged Irish people, and God knows there's enough Irish people living abroad, a lot more than living in Ireland, to actually come back to Ireland during 2013. And they've experienced, and you'll have the figures, but something like 13 to 15% increase in tourism arrivals. So there have been some very good initiatives as well in promotion from the government tourism boards around the continent, I would imagine.
That's a good point to add. Very good, very good. We've covered a lot of areas in trying to respond to that vital question as why all of this is happening, because understanding it is very vital. From the rise of the middle class, to the affluency and the rise in geopolitical importance of the BRICS and the developing countries, to the technological aspects, airlines and cultural aspects. So if you don't mind, unless somebody has something to add to that point, I'd like to focus on something that Antonio started to talk about, which is the new markets, the new source markets that are coming into the world. You may well know that our figures indicate that in 2012, China, for the first time ever, took #1 place, replacing Germany as the first source market. Of course, a lot can be argued about this because many people say, well, yes, but you're counting in Chinese that are going to Macau and Hong Kong. But still, it's Chinese traveling. And this year, the Chinese outsource market grew between 25 to 28% over 2012 in 2013. Our figures may indicate, when we close the numbers, that 97 million Chinese traveled from China in 1 year, spending an average of $130 billion in 1 year. So my question to you, how do you see the potentials of these emerging new markets, particularly China and Russia? And what would you consider being the best prospect markets for 2014? Do you have any differing views on that? And if I may, I would start with, you were the last speaker, Peter, the first time, but I think logically you should be the first speaker on this one.
Okay, thank you. We have within TUI some experience of the Russian market. and it's fascinating. I think there's a lot of similarities between the Russian markets and the European markets in that it's obviously extreme northern hemisphere, harsh winters, and therefore there is a strong demand for sun and beach holidays. And the pattern is very similar to what we're seeing within Europe. It's in its very early stages of growth. It's exciting from that perspective, and that's where the exciting part ends, but the challenges are huge operating within that market. It's full of...
Can you give us some examples of that?
In terms of, well, it's full of Turkish entrepreneurs. There's massive overcapacity. There's 75% of the holidays being sold within 4 to 6 weeks of departure. Apart from that, it's pretty good. So there's a lot of challenges, but this is going to be a huge market and a very important market, and we'll go through all the consolidation process that we saw in the 70s, 80s and 90s in Europe. It's a classic situation. It's just at the early stages. And therefore that market has some very exciting characteristics. We've done a lot of work in terms of studying China, and I think as you alluded to, that's quite different because today the Chinese have an absolute desire to go shopping. So they want to go to Hong Kong, Singapore, they go to Sydney, and they like to gamble and they go to Macau. A vast amount of, therefore, travel in China, from China is intra-Asia. And the challenges will be how we can encourage the Chinese to come to Europe in terms of scale. And we're going to have to get our minds around visas, as we are in Russia, to make it easier. And today it's relatively small in terms of Chinese, and it tends to be as small escorted tour groups. Within TUI, we've had a long-term partnership with China Travel Services. But getting our minds around the Chinese and what they want is very different when I compare it to Russia. And typically also they're traveling for 3 or 4 days as opposed to longer stays. So there's some very different dynamics going on in those two markets.
Thank you. Luis, you're into also the analysis of all what you get in terms of information and accumulating that and watching and observing the trends. What would you say about the new markets and where are the prospects going and leading 2014 and beyond?
I mean, the growth of these markets is unstoppable. I mean, it is clear that, we're a bit worried about emerging markets because they are growing now 6% instead of 10%. Okay, but we know how much the traffic is linked to the evolution of the economy. It's linked to the fact that, as has been mentioned, the middle classes are becoming more. The traffic between Asia and Europe has been in the double digit for the last years. And there is no reason to think that this is going to stop because the population of Asia is huge. And more people can afford traveling around the world. So I believe that this will definitely continue in the coming years. Each country may have their own particularities, but this will benefit Europe, as Europe is still, is the main region in terms of destination. We have 5 countries amongst the top 10 destinations in the world, and therefore we will benefit from this growth of the middle class and this growth of the traffic around the world. Definitely, yes. And the trends, are... What we see is again, you mentioned about China. Yes, China is growing a lot. Russia, India is also growing. I mean, all the countries where the economy is really evolving is having automatically an impact in the traffic and in the volumes.
And a big population, a large population.
And a big population, right. True.
Thank you so much. Jose Maria, shopping was mentioned.
I would like to add something. I would like to add something because I completely agree that for the next years, we should look east. I think it's obvious, no?
Yes.
Technological, economical, demographic. But I think that we should not forget west. We have there is another revolution, but it's so near us that maybe we cannot see it. It's the retiring age of baby boomers. Wealthier, healthier, and willing to travel. In the next 10 years, just to give you a hint, just to give our audience a hint, in the next 10 years, the people over 65, only in the United States, will jump from 40 million to 55 million. That is 36% increase. And now, thanks to the recovery in economy, these guys are very healthy and wealthy. And they will not stay at home. They will not stay at home. Exactly the same figures in absolute and relative terms we can find in Europe. So yes, there is something very big happening in East, but we should not forget West, because these traveler baby boomers, with their cultural level, with their economical level, with their will to live, to life, and to experience, will reshape our industry always also a lot, because these guys will not be able to only discover. These guys will get involved with places. They are here to experience. They would like to experience. Probably they have already visited Paris, London, Madrid, New York. These guys want another thing. They want to live an experience. They want to get involved with the places they visit. They want to cross a river or ski through a valley, and we should be ready to respond to them also.
Very good point. Very good point. Thank you. And now I'd like to turn to Miguel and Gerald for the perspective of the hospitality industry, because you are also experiencing firsthand the shift and the trend and the effect of the new source markets that are impacting. So maybe, Miguel, if you could start, and then I'll come to Gerald. How do you see that happening in the hospitality industry, and what are the prospective trends in that regard?
You mean on the new technologies and...
No. I mean the impact of the new source markets on your business. Yes.
Well, the new source market, they are already influencing our business. For example, Russia, that you were talking before, in Canary Islands, a typical percentage of different nationalities in one of our hotels. Now we have maybe nearly 30% online, 22% Russian, 19% German, maybe 15% English, and then all on. So this has changed our world. This is giving our companies a much stable background. And this change has happened in the last years. Unfortunately, it has happened because of the problems of the north of Africa, but this is a reality. The Russian, they had other problems to get a visa to come to Spain. Now the Spanish authorities, they have improved the system, and now in 24 hours you can have a visa to Spain, which is a very important thing. And we see the Russian as one of our basic clients. Germany will continue to be, England will continue to be, but Russia will be there. And we see that the Russian, they don't argue at the moment. It probably will change, but they don't argue as much as the big tour operators well represented here on prices. They spend much more on extras. They make a lot of shopping. So there are clients that they are very wanted in for example, in Canary Islands. During many years, Canary Islands suffer a lack of clientele, and we spent a few years with not easy way to make reasonable turnovers and profits. Since 3 years ago, the world had changed. Yeah. And the world had changed due to the Russian and also the Scandinavian. The Scandinavian, they just stopped going to the north of Africa. And I believe that Spain now has to take advantage of this situation to improve our quality and to be prepared when these markets open again, not to suffer that they go to these destinations. Possibly at the beginning what will happen that they will do very low prices to get the clients there, But if we have given a consistent quality, we will be in a position to continue having these clients in our country.
I'm sure you're correct about your analysis, but I'm not quite convinced about the fact that much of the gains of Spain and some of the southern European countries are due to North African situation. Our numbers indicate that the losses in North Africa between Egypt and Tunis, for example, are no more than 2.5 to 3 million, while the gains in the southern European Mediterranean destinations, including Spain, Italy, and Greece, are over 12 million. So there must be something good and right that these destinations are doing, not just benefiting from the crisis, I hope.
This is correct, but at the same time, you have Thailand, which is a destination very much strong in the winter in Scandinavia, in Germany, and now is with a lot of problems. People, the passenger, the client, the tourist, he wants to be safe, and safety is very important.
Yes.
Of course, there is not only Russia. We have other countries in the east that they are increasing the amount of traffic. And I wanted to add that where we see a future also is in South America. For example, when we built some hotels 4 years ago in Brazil, and when we made our studies, we calculate that 25% of our clients will be Brazilian and 75% European. Yeah. What happened now is that we have 90% Brazilian and 10% European. In Mexico, even with all the problems that they have of safety, of kidnapping and all these problems, the middle class is growing tremendously. And the amount of the potential in Mexico with a country of 100 million inhabitants is very big.
I agree. You're absolutely correct. Gerald, now not from a European perspective, but for somebody that's operating in the heart of the Middle East in Dubai, do you see the trends in the same direction, or are some differences in your observations?
They're very similar trends, but I think that it's also interesting in terms of not so much the challenges, but the adjustments that we have to make to cope with the new markets, particularly you mentioned within the hospitality industry. And we've seen in Dubai, for example, the Chinese are very aspirational travelers. They would say they want to stay in the hotels that are well known. For example, they will want to stay in Burj Al Arab when they come to Dubai. But they won't necessarily want to stay for longer than a day or two, for obvious reasons. And then it's up to us to make sure that we keep them within our resorts or we keep them within our own brand as they have an opportunity to stay in other hotels in Dubai. It's also the thing of the language barrier that we would have. We have 350 employees from China working for us in Dubai, so that they can communicate obviously with the Chinese market. And this is really important, not only for Chinese, but obviously for Russians, but particularly for Chinese, as so many of them are first-time travelers coming out of China. And then adjusting your product within the actual hotel is very important. Funny little anecdote, we have quite a number of high-end retail outlets within Burj Al Arab. One particular drapery store with the top brands, all the Zegna, Lanvin, and these various brands. And I think anybody who works in the business of letting out retail, a retail operator will never tell the landlord that business is good in case we put the price up of the rent. So I asked one of the shops recently, when we were really full with Chinese people in the Burj Al Arab during Chinese New Year, I said, you must be really happy now with all of our Chinese business. They're coming in and buying the suits and buying the clothes and everything. They said, no, we're not. You didn't tell us it was going to be Chinese. We thought it was going to be a Russian business, and all our suits are too big for these guys. So they don't actually get them. So it is really important to be able to adjust for the guests that are coming. And this is something that, from language, from signage, from everything we do, and from understanding what their needs are, becomes so important to us. In the Maldives, it's the same thing with our hotels there. We didn't expect that we would have such an influx of Chinese business, so we transferred some employees down to the Maldives to be able to help out the Chinese visitors.
We're going to be talking about the Maldives and the trends and some of the new tendencies among consumers. But maybe let's turn to you, Antonio, now for a final comment on this issue here. There was a time where European airlines and North American airlines were dominating the whole scene. carrying people from known destinations to other known destinations. Today, the scene has become completely open, and we see a lot of very strong and powerful airlines coming from China, from the Middle East. How is that affecting the dynamics of the new source markets that everybody was talking about in this panel? And how do you see it from the airline's perspective?
Well, I think it's the airline industry is global for everything except for the equity, because of the foreign investment restrictions everywhere. You cannot have cross-regional mergers or something like this, but it is not the case of our conversation right now. The matter of fact today is that more than 3 billion are traveling every year, 3 billion people are traveling every year by plane around the world. Where they're coming from, where they're going to, where they're going through sometimes, because it is quite important.
You're including in that domestic travel, of course.
Yeah, everything.
Yes.
Everything. Domestic, because the domestic concept is quite amazing. If you talk about domestic in Europe, you're talking about a very narrow environment. But domestic in the United States is you're traveling east to west, and it's far away. It's like Sevilla, Moscow, you know what I mean? So it's domestic is a quite an ambiguous concept. But 3 billion people are traveling around the world. And I think the first concept is you have to fish where the fishes are. And the fishes are all over the world. And from the airline point of view, it is a question of origin, it is a question of destination, which can be made both sides of the line, you know what I mean? So I think it's a lot of possibilities, of course, and it's a huge growth from the Eastern airlines, but this economic development in the eastern part of the world is creating a lot of possibilities for the Western airlines as well, you know. Yes. As a matter of fact, the forecast of IATA for this year is giving quite a good prospect for the European airlines, for the American airlines, both North and South American, and for the Asian airlines as well. So I think it's quite a wonderful growth for everybody in the coming years, because as far as the traffic is increasing, it's a source of business for everybody.
It's great to hear you talk about that in such an optimistic and a very forward-looking and open-minded approach.
I had been optimistic in the difficult times, and now that the easy ones are coming, I'm more optimistic than ever.
Okay. The real bosses in this hall just sent me a little note saying that we have 15 minutes left, so let's try to make the best out of the 15 minutes here and wrap up with the last element here. What I want to talk about now is these new source markets and the new trends of growth are creating and are developing now a new profile for the traveler. And much has been mentioned now with the new source markets. I was in the Maldives last month. And the last time I was in the Maldives was 4 years before that. And I was absolutely amazed by the change of the landscape there. I mean, the tourism landscape. 65 to 70% of the visitors there were from China. And we thought that the Chinese go just for shopping. They travel just to cities. And that there is something between a Chinese visitor and Sun and Beach that don't go together. I was proven wrong. There are many, many changes that are happening in the world, as you very well, Jose Maria, also mentioned. Older people, younger people, youth travel now is a revolution altogether. So what do you think, in your mind, are the changes in the profile of the traveler? What is it that we should be preparing ourselves for? Sometimes when we think about the Chinese as a main source market, we think that we should change ourselves just to please them. And in many cases, we're proven wrong because they want to come and see us as we are, not as we want them to think we are. So can we talk a little bit about the profile of the new traveler and what are the tips that you have learned from your different fields of experiences? Let's start with you, Jose Maria.
I think we have touched many other things. No, in my opinion, there are two main things that will shape the new traveler. One is economy and one is demography. The economy, as we were saying before, the up-and-coming middle class, so many people traveling for first time that will have the need to discover, the need to see things for first time. And I think we should be ready to show the places, cities. I think people traveling for the first time are eager to see the cities. And as I was saying also before, there is also a technological revolution. I think mainly with the 380 of Airbus or the 777 of Boeing, we are seeing that we can arrive to smaller places faster and cheaper. That means that many destinations and many people that were not daring to travel will travel. So we'll find also new travelers seeking for new places. And I think we should be also ready for that. And these guys will come very informed because they will have all the internet, they will have all the mobility. The real revolution, in my opinion, in travel will be when really internet is accessible from the telephone. The telephone will make the difference, in my opinion, because it will be an instrument for understanding and it will be an instrument for knowing. So I think in that sense we have to be prepared not to give so much information, but to get a credibility. I think that the tourist will come with all the homework done in terms of information, or a lot of homework done. But due to the fact that it will be new, because it's rising to the level in which they can afford traveling, or is new because they will find this small spot. In any case, they will be new. So what we have to be prepared is to give them fun and credibility. The information will be at their side, probably.
So the new traveler is more inquisitive, more educated, more informed, and more choosy.
And much more demanding in that sense. Much more demanding of abstract things, of credibility, of support, of fun, not only of information.
Thank you. Miguel.
You know, I think the satisfaction of people to make organizing their own trip, it gives an ego trip, which is important.
The freedom.
And they are. I remember once a friend of mine 2 years ago, he was arranging a flight to Los Angeles because he had a daughter studying there, and he was so happy to find a special offer only for $600, and he came to me, Miguel, imagine I have realized now I could go to see my daughter and it's only $600 return. So I think this implication in creating the trip will be bigger and bigger. At the same time, we have these big webs like TripAdvisor that many clients, before making the decision to book, they just go to these webs and see the information if it's the right hotel or the right destination. So I see this a big improvement. The world is becoming small, and people, as Jose Maria was saying, will travel from China, probably will not come to our resorts. They will go to the big cities, and I think will be an increase of traffic from China. Is the contrary from the Russian, that they will come, and I think they will continue to come to the resorts to enjoy, to have the sun, to make some shopping. But in general, I think we are lucky to be in the right business.
Yeah, I agree.
Because when you think about the possibilities, about the millions of Chinese that they can travel throughout the world, there's few industries who has the potential that we have. Yeah. And I think this crisis has proved it, because even if you have to to take a lot of measures and to adapt your company to the situation, we had survived happily from a very deep crisis. And not every industry can say the same.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Antonio?
Well, I think it's what Jose Maria and Miguel have already said is absolutely clear. And I think information has been the key. And I'm absolutely sure that years ago, the way of getting whatever the service was along all the long value chain of the traveling, tourist experience. And so years ago, the only way to be considering ourselves being treated personally was a question of high price. The higher the price was, the more personal the treatment was for you. And right now, with all this social network and with all the technology and with the internet and with everything, I think we're getting the habit to have almost a direct dialogue with the service provider, whatever it is. And so information and technology is going to be key, absolutely. And from the side of the ourselves, whatever we are in all the value chain, I think it's going to be quite important to be able to segmentate properly the customer group that we are going to be addressing to, in such a way we are sure that we are delivering the right message at the right time and not losing clients or customers because of a very global communication which is affecting nobody. So it is much more a question of direct communication with the user than being in big advertising campaigns or whatever.
Yes. Thank you so much. Peter?
A couple of points. First of all, when I think about the market and the classic, what we describe as a mainstream volume tourism market, I don't think what we're seeing in the likes of Russia and Brazil, the customers are any different to what we're seeing in Europe. But I think it's a very interesting point that Jose Maria made with regards to baby boomers. I think I'm one of those. And the fact that there's a group of people around the world, and this isn't just about emerging markets, that are very high net worth, who have got all the physical possessions they want. And now they're thinking about how they spend their time on experiential travel. And I think, and I would agree, that's a massive opportunity. One of my businesses, we've partnered with Four Seasons, and we do round-the-world jet trips, which are $70,000, $80,000 a person, and they sell out. So that's at one extreme. But so I think, and I think technology today, and particularly with smartphones, enables the customer to communicate with us whenever they want with a 24/7 option. And that also creates a more tailored, personal, individual experience. So we've got some very different dynamics. But I would absolutely share Miguel's point. Where we are today is probably the most exciting we've been within our industry in terms of what is going on in our traditional core markets in the West. What is happening within the BRIC economies. So it's South America, and what's going on in Russia and India and China is fascinating and will give rise to massive opportunities.
Thank you so much. Gerald, you can see that they sent me a little note saying that our assets went down from 15 minutes to 5 minutes, but still we can do a lot with that.
Well, I know I'm Irish, but I can do this in 30 seconds, yeah. So don't worry. What I don't understand still, say, as a hotelier, as a travel person, we need people to travel. You're talking about the billions of people, almost 2 billion people traveling within the next few years. And most people travel by air. And still, governments and airlines around the world and the travel trade, we accept that there should be restrictions on not even legacy airlines, but why, as Antonio says, if they want to buy an airline in Australia, why can't they go into a free market capitalist country and buy 100% of that airline if it's on the local market, if it's an IPO'd airline? They can't do it. It's still protected. And we still have traffic rights that are protected. We remember the story about Emirates trying to fly to Toronto 7 days a week. No, they can only do 3 days a week. It would be good for Toronto, good for tourism in Canada if Emirates Airlines was allowed to fly more frequently into Canada. That's just an example. I'm not highlighting it for any particular reason, other than I really don't understand why we in the travel trade don't lobby more to free up this whole restrictive practice that goes on worldwide. If we want to open a hotel in Toronto, we don't need hotel rights in Toronto. We just need to go in and build a hotel, subject to planning permission, which is normal. And I don't really understand why that happens. The other point I would say about tourism and the trends of tourism and what people are saying, leisure tourists as opposed to, say, business travellers, totally unrelated to what I've just said, is that we really find that our guests now want a sense of enrichment from their holiday experience. They want to come back feeling they've got something valuable from that particular experience.
What Miguel was saying.
Yes, and when we do this very much in a place, again in Dubai, for example, where the Sheikh Mohammed Centre for Cultural Understanding, we invite guests down to a local mosque, and they get a lecture from an imam in the mosque about Islam, but not about the difference between Islam and the other religions, but about the similarities between Judaism and Christianity and Islam. And it's amazing to talk to the guests coming out from this. They say, wow, it's nice to be on the beach for most of the day, but it is nice to have taken one morning to go down to the mosque and just see what it's about. They feel that they're culturally connecting into the location in which they're visiting, which I think is very good.
Thank you so much, Gerald. Thank you so much. Luis, you have the last word here.
I will be short because most of the things have been covered already. I will just highlight the personalization of the offer. In my view, will be important in the future. We are talking about different people now traveling around the world with different interests, with a lot of information. Therefore, if we want to really have something that calls their attention with the amount of choices that they may have in the world today, we need to have something that is quite particular to them. And that's why I mentioned before that technology needs to play a key role in knowing better and allowing this dialogue with the final traveler.
Thank you so much. I think that's very important. Our time is almost out, but I'm still going to squeeze in one or two questions that I want you to answer in one sentence and one sentence only. And it's going to be a bit of a challenging question. What are the three most promising destinations in your mind that will prosper in the coming 5 years? Name three destinations. Jose Maria.
You always begin with me with the difficult questions. Countries, areas, may I, or...
Whatever you would define as a destination.
Europe?
That's quite big. That's half the world.
Do you think Europe is quite big? Antonio was saying that maybe for an American it's only a country.
Yeah, I know. I meant in terms of volumes, but fine. I'll accept that.
Okay. 3 hours flight
okay.
From side to side. Not so
So
big.
Europe?
Europe, because it's different. China, because it's completely different. Spain, because we have the lifestyle.
Thank you. Miguel?
Well, I agree with China. I agree with Europe, but I would say the big cities in Europe, Paris, London, Madrid, Barcelona. And then I believe there is a big future in Central America. Mexico, for example, because you have a tremendous traffic from the North of America, US and Canada.
Very good. Antonio?
Well, you're making me a very easy question because from IAG perspective...
Wherever Iberia flies.
Well, I mean, being Iberia, British Airways, and Boeing, the three priorities within the group, it is clear that our bet is Madrid, Barcelona, and London. Don't doubt it. I think we're very well placed, by the way.
You ended with London, so that made it easier for Peter to make his three choices.
Well, no, London is much more right now, matter of fact. Yeah. It's very well developed. And Madrid and Barcelona, I think, have a clear perspective.
Cities, basically. Cities.
Yeah.
Peter?
I mean, for us, our core destination is Spain and the islands. I think Greece has got a very exciting opportunity now with the new government and a whole new approach. But we mustn't underestimate what is going on in Asia. And I think Malaysia is also very interesting.
Thank you so much. Gerald?
15 years ago, we had less than 500,000 visitors into Dubai every year. 2013, we had 11 million visitors.
So it's Dubai.
As Harry Sheikh Mohammed has said, 20 million by 2020 before we were awarded the the World Expo 2020. So I think it will continue to grow at the pace that it's growing. I also believe, as we just said, China, inbound to China should be far greater. And this comes back to the whole visa issue. Yes. And the Chinese have to loosen up on visit visas into China to make it worthwhile. But there's huge pent-up demand, in my opinion, for China. And I think the same would apply for India.
China, India, and Dubai. Luis.
Spain, number one. And then, of course, countries that are in Asia that will be different and at the end attractive and more secure in the future. China, India, that will represent a challenge or an adventure for people to go. But I will still keep Spain and the main destination to attract.
Thank you so much. I'm still going to squeeze another quick questions, but you have to promise me to do that in one sentence and one sentence only. Otherwise, the next panel will suffer. If there is one request you would want to do, you would want to ask the public sector, the government, to do for you. I'm here representing the governments. You're representing the private sector, the businesses. What would you think would be the one request you would ask them to do that would make your life easier? I won't start with you. I'll start with Luis this time.
I would say don't stop the growth of this industry. I mean, I don't think they should innovate or generate ideas. This is more the private sector. But the public sector should give a framework to really allow that and not to create barriers to this.
No barriers.
That's correct.
Gerald.
Listen to the World Travel and Tourism Council, the UNWTO, and the World Economic Forum on Travel and Tourism, and loosen up on visit visas. And don't be so concerned about reciprocal arrangements. Get people to make it easy to buy, to bring people into your country.
My God, that's a whole program.
Visas.
Peter.
For governments to create a stable economic environment and which gives customers certainty, and also to ensure that we have a level playing field. And we've seen too many examples of airports disadvantaging traditional companies and giving advantages to some of the new companies, and we want a level playing field.
Transparency.
Yeah.
Antonio.
No barriers and not taking advantage of the places where the people are traveling or passing through to collect taxes, right? Make it cheaper.
Reasonable taxes.
Indeed.
Miguel?
I think the government should listen to the private sector and try to put in practice what we demand. Because, for example, in Spain, now, we can take advantage of the problems of other countries, unfortunately, but we have to react to promote the quality, because this is so important in our business.
Thank you so much. Jose Maria.
I would say respect and protect the passenger rules, the passenger rights, because there are no pleasant experience without getting the basics right. And the basics are the passenger rights.
Thank you so much. A wonderful way of ending this panel. Ladies and gentlemen, let's together thank this wonderful panel and maybe remember one very important sentence that was just said by Miguel Fluca. Listen to the private sector. I think governments must do more of that. Thank you so much. I appreciate you being with us.